So, I heard a rumor that you're in the market to buy a truck. So, there comes a point in a truck driver's life where they have to decide whether they want to continue driving somebody else's equipment or do you want to give it a go on your own. And there are several ways to do it. So, what we're going to do on this video is we're going to go over some of those ways, some do's, some don'ts, some things to watch out for. And I'm going to give you the benefit of what I've learned over the few years, and hopefully it helps you in your quest to buy a truck. So let's get with it. I'm over here in Greensboro, North Carolina today, and this is something that had been weighing on my mind for a while. We're going to go over buying a truck outright, financing a truck, leasing a truck. There are several different ways to lease a truck, and I'll go over what are some, I'll go over leasing, and I'm going to kind of go over some of these little contractor magazines like we went over the last time, and I'm going to help you navigate through some of these because they can be tricky. So as we navigate through some of these, I'll see if I can't plain up the English a little bit so you'll know what to look for and it'll make sense. So let's get with it. So the first thing we're going to cover is buying a truck outright. If you have the cash and it's a truck that you can lease on somewhere and you have a good idea what you're doing, that's the best way. A lot of companies will not take a truck over a certain age, and they want it to be compatible with e-log and stuff like that. There's a lot of that going around, and insurance rates will dictate a lot of things. But if you can do it and you can find yourself a 10 or 15-year-old truck that's been maintained and you have a good mentorship and all that, go for it. There's been a lot of guys that have made, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars with a $7,000 truck. It's not unheard of. Buying a truck outright's always the best way if you can afford it. But the majority of us can't. So a lot of us have to find financing. And if you're brand new in this, I recommend don't jump right in if you've only got 3 or 6 months. Give yourself a year. Give yourself a couple years. Save up some money. Because financing a truck is, you're going to have a good high percentage rate. My first truck was 10%. This truck's 12%. I've seen it go as high as 22 to 25 because trucks are high risk items. People and banks, they take a large risk financing trucks because so many of them get repossessed for non-payment. Be expected to pay. I got a good rate. I paid, my last truck was $1,600 a month. This is $1,227. So expect to pay somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 for your first truck, and about a 3-year note, depending on how much you put down, and that's always a good factor. So if you can get with a good financial institution and you can prove, or your bank will lend you some money, that's always the best way too. Other than just buying it outright, and that would be nice. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on financing. Chances are your local bank is not going to take on a semi-truck. If they do, and you got the paperwork to prove you can pay for it and all that, that's great. If you can do it locally and your bank will do it, I say go with someone you trust, and hopefully your payments will be affordable. Chances are, though, if you're going through a dealer and your bank won't finance you, like I went through Peterbilt to buy this truck, and we had to get third-party financing because Peterbilt would not finance this truck because this is a used truck, and it was 5 years old when I bought it. So I couldn't get a PACCAR that pack car financing and all that because it wasn't new. So we went to a third party, and I got a decent interest rate, like I talked about. A lot of people would think that's high. In the truck world, it's really not. You want something between 12 and 15% if you can swing it. And to a lot of people, that sounds incredibly high, but if you can get below that, go for it. But I had to go through a third-party financing, and they financed the truck for 3 years, and everything worked out. Plus, I put down a good down payment, and I also turned in my old truck and got a reasonable trade for that. So, but if you're buying a truck for the first time, you're going to need at least $5,000 down. At least $5,000 down. And you're going to probably have a little higher of an interest payment because you are a first-time buyer. So that's something else to be mindful of. So let's talk about the other way now. We're going to talk about leasing right now. I don't approve of leasing. It's not the lease itself. It's the way these companies do it is absolutely criminal. They get these kids on a 7-year lease and then con them into trading in the truck after 3 years, so they'll never pay off the lease. It's just, as far as I'm concerned, I've seen too many good people who bought the lie and got screwed. But I'll show you the ins and outs of the leasing program. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the contract they make you sign. Most of these people, when they sign these leasing contracts, they never bother to read them. They trust the recruiter, and we're going to go back to that guy, that he's telling you the truth. And if you were to take a lease contract to a lawyer, it would take him literally a week to go through every line of that and figure out how many different ways you're going to get screwed. Now, if you're dead set on leasing a truck, say like you want to do it for a year or two, but you really don't want to buy a truck or anything like that, go to a leasing company like through Volvo or Pack Lease or Lone Mountain or one of these leasing companies and get a truck that way. That way you're not tied to any particular company. And we're going to go over that. So as we go through our little magazines again, this is the National Trucking Magazine. Find your next trucking job, and owner-operators and lease purchase drivers, it's standard pay, $1.15 per mile, loaded and unloaded plus fuel surcharge. Now, the doublespeak here is, I'll bet you that 15 cents is the fuel surcharge. I would not be surprised. The last company I worked for that did the lease like this, I wasn't part of that lease, but they did it $1 a mile plus the national average. And I thought it was really funny that they were paying me 15 to 20 cents a mile for the national average, when every load I was hauling, the surcharge was between 40 and 70 cents a mile. So I was getting probably 50, maybe 50 cents or 50% of the surcharge. And then when I figured out what the loads were actually paying, I was working for about 45%. These are things that you need to take in account. This is why working for mileage is bad. And I've blocked out all the stuff on this. So this says owner operators and lease drivers earn up to $160,000 with new pay increase. $160,000, that's gross. You take your I spent $62,000 in fuel last year. Take all your payments out, I'll guarantee you you're not going to pay tax, and you're going to clear probably about maybe $20,000 is what you're going to take home. Yeah. You got to take fuel out of that. You have to take your payments out of that. Plus, you have all your bills at the house. it's not good. For that, you're working for about just a hair over $1 a mile here. If you do 150,000 miles a year, you're getting 160,000 up to, and no, that said up to. So you might only make 100,000 a year, and you have to take everything out of that. You know, with the last company I was with, they were paying me $1 a mile plus a fuel surcharge. The last full year I did, I grossed $134,000 and paid tax on $16,459. That's obscene. That's highway robbery. This is why I tell people, you really don't want to work for mileage. This one here, $1.18 a mile loaded, $1.05 a mile empty. 2,700 miles a week average. So that right there tells me that some guys are getting more, a lot of guys are probably getting less. Says no forced dispatch. Now, my last company said no forced dispatch, and that meant take it or leave it, because they didn't give you any choice. You got a load. If you didn't like it, yeah, you were probably sitting until the next day. So that's something to be mindful of. There's a flatbed company here, and I have gone through this, and there's absolutely nothing of any relevance in this whole. It says, what do you pay? It says, we pay 75% of gross revenue without the trailer. 100% fuel surcharge is paid to the truck. Our owner-operator fleet average gross revenue is $189 per mile. Midway space operators get over $2 a mile. You get 75% of gross revenue plus 100% of fuel surcharge. Blah, blah, blah. That sounds good, but that's gross. So you really have to take into account what your deadhead and all that's going to be. Yeah, it all sounds good, but this company has a lot of lease drivers, and from the looks of the drivers and the looks of the fleet and the looks of what they're hauling, it's not somebody I would drive for. But what they've said here doesn't sound all that bad, but at the same time, you would really have to go through it. But out of this whole magazine here, that was the only thing they said about any kind of pay. That's a red flag. So we'll throw that in the pile. So let's go over a couple of other things. The long and the short of it is, you're going to have to pay your bills. That's without a question. A lot of the lease trucks that I've talked to guys about, they're paying $2,500 to $3,500 a month. The problem with mileage pay is you have to run more miles. So if you're running 3,500 miles a week, if you're managing to get 3,500 miles a week, you're working that whole week just to pay the lease on that truck. You're going to have a fuel bill of about $1,000 a week. So right there, if you split the lease payment up into 4 equal payments per week, plus what you're spending on fuel and insurance per week, and that's $2,000 a week, easily. So that's $8,000 a month. So where's your revenue coming from? You have to remember that everything you have left goes back into the truck or paying your bills at the house. I've talked to so many lease guys who ended up getting screwed at $3,300 a month that, they're getting $80 and $90 a week paychecks after it all. And you still have to buy tires. You still have to buy all the extraneous stuff. You still have to get services. All that stuff comes out of what's left. So it's always important to have an idea of what you want. There's one more thing I'm going to go over before I wrap this video up. I know listening to videos of me talking probably isn't the most exciting things in the world, and I sympathize. But if you're just out of driving school and your company is already wanting you to lease a truck, don't. If you've got 3 months in and they're pressuring you to lease a truck, don't. And I'm very serious about this, and I'm being very sincere. You don't know enough about what you're doing to really handle this at that point. Don't get me wrong, you can have all the mentorship in the world. Your dad could have been a truck driver, your friends and your brothers. And truthfully, I was doing this 15 years before I bought my first truck, and it was like night and day. I went from being a company driver to an owner-operator, and it was a culture shock. It was sink or swim. And I had to learn real quick. If they start pressuring you to lease a truck, please don't. If you can't afford a down payment on a truck, you can't afford a lease truck. And what a lot of these big mega companies are doing is they're getting these young drivers into these lease trucks and basically running the wheels off them, but paying them just enough to keep them to where they are forced to start training. Why would you lease a truck and then have to train people how to drive in your truck? I don't want people driving my truck. This is my truck. So you have to be discerning. And a lot of these companies are talking, and it's a lot of double talk. Come lease with us. Be your own boss. Be an owner-operator. No, you're not an owner-operator. You're driving a leased truck. It's like me starting a moving company and then going down to U-Haul and renting trucks. It doesn't make any sense. What happens is you end up renting a piece of company equipment. You can't modify it. You can't change anything. You still have to drive at the governed speed. You have to follow all the company rules. You lose your workman's comp. You lose your health insurance. You lose all your benefits. For what? At the end of the day, you're not going to make any more money. You're probably going to make less money than you were as a company driver leasing a truck. So it's a sink or swim. Please be very discerning. Do your homework. These lease contracts are very slippery slopes. They can yank that truck out from under you for anything. Read your contract. If you drill a hole to mount something in your bunk, that's defacement, and they can fine you for it. They can take it out. They have all sorts of clauses. If you have $10,000 saved up in your escrow and it's a walkaway lease and you decide this isn't for me, I'm going to turn the truck in. Hey, guess what? They're going to prorate the tires. They're going to prorate the brakes. They're going to prorate the mileage. And chances are that $10,000 is going to be gone like that, and you're going to end up owing them $2 or $3 grand. That's not a joke. This happens on a daily basis with leases. So be very discerning about what you do. So as I'm backed into a door here, I'll tell you about the mistakes that I've made. One of the big mistakes that I made when buying a truck was that I was overthinking. I overthought fuel mileage. I overthought the kind of truck. I overthought resale. I overthought a lot. And I just didn't go out and buy the truck that I could afford to do what I needed to do. That's what you need. You need a truck suited for the specific task that is at hand. That's what you need. Don't worry about name brand loyalty. Don't worry about any of this other stuff. Get yourself a good quality truck with a good maintenance history. Truthfully, if you take the cabs off all of these trucks, Most of them have the same engine, same transmissions, and same rear ends. Get yourself whatever is going to get you out there for the best value with the best history. So don't overthink it. Don't get caught up in brand loyalty, and just get out there. And then your next truck, your second truck, can be the dream truck or whatever. But don't overthink, don't overpay, and do what you have to do to get out as reasonably debt-free as you can to get out here on the road. Because I'll tell you what, once you're on your own with your own truck and all that, a whole new world's going to open up. It's going to be fascinating. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. So, good luck. I hope this video has been informative. If you like it, please like, share, subscribe. Please comment if there's anything I missed or anything you had issue with. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching.